Okay, this is the handout on the Quick Shop example, and hopefully you've had a chance to read it. If you haven't, you might want to stop the video and read through it. What this example shows you is really sort of the nature of the research process and how things can start very informally and end up with a very formal research project. In this case, Quick Stop, someone who worked there noticed that there weren't very many women who came in. And it says they passed that along to management, and they informally, sort of with a tally, kept track of the number of women who came in. And it turns out that it seemed to be true. There weren't many women. And so this was passed up the management chain, and they decided to do some qualitative research. So they decided to do some in-depth interviews with some potential customers to see what issues they had with Quick Stop. And you can see down here that qualitative research. It says that they conducted about two dozen interviews with current and potential female customers. These people were paid to come in and do the research. That's one thing you might take note of in the research studies you're looking at. Were the participants paid? Many of the research studies you may be looking at in journals had to do with classwork, so it was a class requirement. So you might want to ask yourself, how does that influence the outcome or influence the results? Are the students giving the researcher what they wanted to hear? So you might want to think about that and put that maybe in your comments section, that maybe this needs to be redone with people who aren't in a classroom or something. But these people were paid to come in to give a discussion, and the interviewers asked them certain questions and sort of followed up whatever the people said. So they really kind of started out with some, what do you think of convenience stores, and then what do you kind of specifically think about Quick Stops, and then kind of just basically followed up with questions to really dig down and see what the people thought. So they really didn't have a script that they were following. They're just kind of asking general questions to begin with and then following the comments. And here's the actual data from the qualitative research. The bathrooms at convenience stores were believed to be the dirtiest and could be found in the city. Gross was the most common description, and that perception permeated everything that women felt about the convenience stores in general. Quick Stop was seen as one of the worst convenience stores. I love this quote: kind of place for a man to buy gas, get a six-pack of cheap beer, and cigarettes. So this is a guy who smokes and drinks cheap beer, but not the kind of place I want to go to. That quote is the data. That is the data for qualitative research. You notice it's just words, and what you do when you analyze qualitative research is you look at, she said, this is a place a man goes not just to buy beer, but to buy cheap beer. And that this is not the kind of place I want to go. And you look at the level of language. If you're in psychology, you do this a lot with qualitative research. You look at body language, you listen to tone of voice, you listen for the modifiers. This is really gross, or this is gross, or I don't like this. You look at the terms they're using, and that's the research you're doing. Well, once the management team had an understanding of what some of these issues were, they used the qualitative research to do a more thorough quantitative analysis. And here's where they got into the quantitative. So the qualitative was used as a precursor to quantitative. They hired a research firm to conduct 250 telephone interviews with female respondents, some of who had been to Quick Stop, some of who hadn't. And they had a script about questions that they asked everybody the same questions to record their answers. And they're getting data that you can see on the back that's very different from the qualitative data. This is quantitative data now. Over 76% of female Quick Stop customers were women under 30 without children, while women with children and higher incomes were 5 times less likely to shop at Quick Stop. That is a quantitative analysis. The good news was that of the women who didn't currently use Quick Stop, 64% said that if these stores were to update their color schemes, clean up their bathrooms, and update their health and feminine products, that they would be willing to try Quick Stop again. So you can see they've gone from vague sort of comments to quantifying results. Okay? So this is a clear example of how they use qualitative to lead into quantitative. Quantitative research is very expensive, and so lots of times people will do this. They'll use qualitative analysis to prepare for quantitative analysis. Okay? Now, a couple of things to keep in mind with qualitative analysis. Remember that you need to examine the whole. If you're doing performance reviews, for instance, you don't talk to just one person. You talk to everybody that person works with. I remember I worked at a place where they had a warehouse. I was vice president of the company. And we had a warehouse, and the guy who worked in the warehouse, everybody else was terrified of him. And they said, oh, don't go down to the warehouse, don't go, you'll bite your head off, oh, don't go down there. Well, he never gave me a hard time. Even before I was vice president, when I just worked there as a worker bee, he was very nice to me. He was very kind and always helpful. And so I couldn't really understand what was going on. So when we did a performance review of that guy, we asked a lot of people in the company what was going on, because it sounded like he was a terrible employee from what we heard. What we noticed was happening was, if you went into the warehouse and you said, hi, we'll call him Joe. Hi, Joe, I need X. He was very friendly. Joe would say hi. He would go get it for you from the shelves. He'd bring it to you, make sure that's what you wanted, send you on your way. Always responded in a pleasant way. That's the way he was with me. But if you walked into the warehouse and went to the shelf and pulled something off yourself, Joe got upset. And so what we found out was that it wasn't that Joe was a bad person, or it wasn't that Joe had two personalities. It was the behaviors he was responding to. He was very meticulous with watching his inventory, and he hated for people to just come in and take things and not tell him, which would make anybody mad. So we needed to talk to more than just one person, so you need to examine the whole. There are multiple realities. To me, Joe was a kind and great employee. To other people, he was a holy terror, right? So you need to have you need to take account of multiple realities. And you need to know that there's really no overarching framework. There's no right way to do qualitative analysis. There's just lots of different tactics you can use, but there's no prescribed right way to do it, okay? These are the types of qualitative research. I don't know if you can see this or not, but you've got the slides there to look at. The types of qualitative research, the first one, we'll put it on the types so you can see. The first is called grounded theory. I've had people who found articles that they're looking at online that they say there's no sample size, they didn't talk to anybody, didn't interview anybody, it's not a case study of a company, it just seems to be they're talking about theory. Well, that's called a grounded theory piece. It's basically a review of literature. We're going to look at one of those in a second. And that might be the method, just a review of theories. But what they're looking at is they're doing something based upon some type of theory. Maybe they're looking for the traits of transformational leadership in people. So they're talking to people using the theory of transformational leadership and asking people questions about their boss to see if he's a transformational leader or not. The second type of qualitative research is phenomenology, which is a fun word. Okay, maybe not. Phenomenology. That song will be in your head now from now on. Phenomenology is where you're describing an experience, an event, a happening, you're recording an event, you're trying to fully understand what happened and get a picture of what happened. That's phenomenology. Ethnography is where you're looking at the experiences of a particular group. I had a student once who did a paper on tribal leadership because she was Native American. And so that was looking at a particular group of people. I had another lady who did looked at military leadership versus civilian leadership. That was ethnography because it looked at a particular community, a particular group. That's an ethnographic study, and what they're doing is recording the experiences of the group and seeing how that's different from others. The last one is historical. This is where you're going back in time to look at an event. Now, this is one of the problems with qualitative analysis, is that some people say that it's anecdotal, that it can't be repeated, and that's a problem.